everyone, and welcome to New Trials Podcast. I'm Preya.
And I'm Melanie.
The New Trials of Cardcaptor Sakura, Syaoran, and Friends is a popular ongoing fanfic by Wishluv, and it's based off of Clamp's Cardcaptor Sakura. And in each episode, we'll do a deep dive of a new chapter. Let's get into it.
So to do a correction from our last episode, I had highlighted some fan discussions, and one of them was one of our Facebook friends, and I had pronounced her name as Measle. And Preya very kindly sent her a message and was like, please tell us how we actually say your name. And she was so very sweet and very understanding, which I appreciate. But correction, her name is Measle, not Measle. And I apologize, I said your name wrong.
I love the community that we have. Just send a message and answers are solved. Okay. Today we'll be talking about Chapter 4, The Camping Trip Part B, Til the Sunrise. Word count is 9,159 words, so that means the second part is larger than the first part. On to the chapter summary. When the storm passed, Aaron needed someone to go with him to find the trail. With Erica stating that she needed Syaoran-kun to stay with her in case her leg gets worse, Sakura went with Aaron, angry with the fact that Erica had used Syaoran's name so soon. We learn about the twins' past through what Aaron tells Sakura and what he thinks to himself. Leading Sakura the wrong way, she slides down a steep slope and he sends out a force that pelts rocks at her. This catches Syaoran's attention as he goes after her. Sakura is now hanging from a cliff and screams out his name. Syaoran screams out Sakura's name and pulls her up. In the safety of his arms, when Sakura asks him to let go for his own security, he said, "No, Sakura, I'll never let you go. Just hold on tight and I'll get you safe. Trust me." As Sakura answered, "Thank you, Syaoran," she knew that they're much closer than before. They battled the forest that turned into the rock snake, and once Sakura sealed it, it went to her where she saw that the name was the Rocky. SNS set up camp nearby, and they find food and they tend to each other's injuries. Sakura broke down under pressure, but Syaoran took her in his arms and soothed her as they fell asleep. The next morning, the two shared a moment as they admired the sunrise together. While Sakura is overjoyed with the view, Syaoran is captivated by the girl next to him. They are rescued by their friends and the teachers, and Sakura learns that Tomoyo had been videotaping the whole thing on camera. Okay, on to discussion. Melanie, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Well, I have just a regular old question for you. So have you ever woke up on purpose to see the sunrise?
You know what? I don't think I have. And I remember there was a night my friends and I went clubbing, and I met a guy at the club, and he was super cute, and I gave him his number, and I was so excited, and it was a sleepover, and I was talking to my friend the whole night, and she just wanted to sleep. She was so tired, but I couldn't stop talking, and then I'm like, "Hey, let's stay up and watch the sunrise," and she's like, "No, I'm gonna sleep," and I think that's when I slept.
Did you ever hear from the guy?
What? Yeah, we went on one date, and then he called, and I saw that like my brother took down his phone number, and I tried calling him again, but the phone number didn't work. So I think my brother accidentally wrote it wrong, and then yeah, that was that. He probably thought I ghosted him when it wasn't the case.
Aw, well, not meant to be, because you have a great guy now.
I do. How about you?
You know, because I knew I was asking you this question, I was thinking about it on my own, and I am not a morning person. As Priya and I have discussed many times, I have the hardest time waking up in the morning. But the only thing I can sort of think of is 2 weekends ago, a friend of mine and myself did a 5K at our local Kansas City Zoo, and we had to be there god awful early in the morning. And I did manage to get a really beautiful video of the sunrise. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put the video of that in it so you guys can see it. But I really, truly think that is the first time in I don't even know how long I've been awake so early to see the sunrise.
Like, I've definitely been awake pre-sunrise, but I never actually stopped what I was doing to watch the sun come up.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I've been on many red eye flights where I'm sure I would have seen it through the airplane, that actually just stop and smell the roses, so to say. That was probably the first time in a long time.
I'm glad you have that memory and you have it on video too.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the top of this chapter, I just had to single out the whole Amber and Emerald thing because I remember when we first started this podcast, you asked me about Cherry Blossom and Little Wolf and if it's actually canon, and I'm like, no, actually it's fanon. But when it comes to Amber and Emerald, this just stinks fanon. Everybody was doing it back in the day. We all adopted it as our own. And I think my first criticism when I used to write fanfic in 2002 was that I was just heavy-handed on the emerald-eyed girl said, the amber-eyed boy replied. And then I realized that, okay, just because everybody else was doing it didn't mean that I had to too. And I'm glad that Wish Chan doesn't fall into this trap because in early 2000s CCS fanfic, you're going to see a lot of that.
For sure. And I know I did it a whole lot too when I wrote some of my first fan fictions. And and I'm so, I've been reading fan fictions for this since the 90s, because I found New Trials in 2009, I want to say, or I can't remember
No,
now.
no, no. 2009 is way so. New Trial started in 1999, so I think you found it in 2001.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's better math. See, I'm not gonna. But yeah, and so to me, it's just so ingrained into me that that's just how you describe their eyes, and it just never even occurred to me that that's probably a fanon thing. But then as soon as you mentioned that, I was like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense.
You don't see Clamp calling their characters like that.
Do not.
And you throw in Tomoyo's amethyst eyes and Ariel's sapphire eyes. Oh, I don't even know who started that, but it's like we all piled on.
Yep, we all kind of took it and just swung for the fences, I think. I also really like the fact that it showed Sakura getting jealous about Arika, because I feel like this is the first time we've ever seen her character get jealous. Because in the original CCS, she was so very much Yukito, Yukito, Yukito until like the very end, then when it finally dawns on her, oh, I have this amazing boy that's been by my side this whole time. I actually love him. And so we didn't really get to see much of that jealousy aspect on her. Because even with Yukito, like she was never jealous of her brother. She always was just like, Hanya, every time she was around Yukito. And so it was really, again, kind of like what I was talking about last chapter. It's just Wish Chan just kind of developing her character and showing like, hey, she gets mad and she gets jealous because she's a human.
I'm so glad you got that because during that whole section, I was just cringing so hard from Erica calling Syaoran like by his first name and the whole fact that, oh, look, Sakura's getting jealous too over my head.
And what do you think about him just allowing her to call him by his first name?
Sean's not one to protest. If people are going to do things, to let them do things. It's just that prior to this, no other girl dared to call him by his first name, so he never had to deal with this before. And I think like Erica just has like that confidence in her. So she doesn't care. She's just gonna go guns blazing and call him by the first name without like a care in the world.
Yeah, I get the fact that she's the type of girl that's probably never been told no, has never been turned down by a guy ever. And so when that happens, you just go in with all the confidence in the world. So yeah, that makes 100% sense.
And also in this chapter, when Aaron and Sakura were leaving to find a path, it was the first time that she was actually checking him out. It's like she was just thinking of his physical features and thinking, oh, he is good looking. And I think it's hilarious that like in arc 4, they're going to be boyfriend girlfriend. But this is where it begins.
And then she also says a quote that I wanted to highlight too. And Sakura says, quote, as if he has some big secret, end quote. Like she was describing his like golden hazeled eyes. And I thought that was another little clever, like, Bing.
Take that, Vale. Our protagonist is too smart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was listening to the audio book chapter that you were doing, and I really like the way you made the difference between Aaron's internal and external thoughts. Like, even though in the text it's pretty obvious, in your voice, you made it pretty clear what he was thinking to himself and what he was actually speaking out loud to Sakura. So good job on you.
Thank you. And then speaking of internal voices, so Aaron mentions in his internal monologue that this is the first time back in this form. So I'm kind of curious what you think about that. Is at this point, is Aaron himself? Is he possessed by the Dark One? Is it like a half and half situation? What do you think?
So I think that because when they were children and Erica was sick, they weren't possessed yet. It's only when she almost died that both of them invited the original twins in their hearts. So right now, it's probably both Aaron and Ricci. That's how I'm going to say his name. So I think it's a mix of both, because like Aaron, he's not going to remember his past lives. He's not going to remember like the twins from the Nadeshiko era. Like, but he knows that the original G5 twins possessed it. So I think it has to be a mixture of OG and himself talking.
And I seem to remember, he wears this amulet quite a lot, and so does Erika. And I think at some point he just stops wearing the amulet, I think is a sign of protest. And then I believe it's kind of shortly after that, if not too long after that, where he starts to get the power of the light. And I think that's when he officially just kind of forces the Dark One out of himself, too.
Yeah, it's going to be a while, because as the reader, we don't really know what's up. It's only until arc 2, when we have the twins as special, that Wish-chan really delves into their backstory fully. Like, I'm sure we'll have clues and this and that, but from what I remember, it's not until that special twins chapter that we learn what goes on. And in her author's notes, I know Wish-chan, she also described it like what the twins have is completely different than what the other 4 have. Like, we're their descendants, but Ricci and Riza. Yes, Ricci and Riza. It's like they have such a vengeful spirit that their vengefulness goes on from generation to generation to generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was kind of curious what you thought about that, because he says a lot of things that are, again, this is like early on in the story too, and he says a lot of things like, it'll be a shame for her eyes to close permanently, or it'll be a shame to like kill her off like I did her mother. And to me, that just doesn't sound like Aaron, And so that's why I was kind of thinking, like, I think mostly at this point in arc 1, it's very much the Dark One that's saying and thinking all these things. And then I think eventually, like to your point in arc 2, we kind of get to know them on a more human level. And then that's when he kind of slowly starts to come into his own person and own character.
Yeah, I totally see that. Now it's we don't get a lot of time in the twins' head. I think this is like probably the first time that we get this deep. So it's an interesting choice that Wish-chan makes when portraying this character.
For sure.
So Sakura had a nasty fall. Now, if I were in her shape, I don't even know how I would walk again.
I would be dead.
Because like if I was in her place, that's it. Like I'm not in that, because Sakura, she trains, she's a cheerleader, she's sporty. Me, no, I would not be in a good shape after a fall like that.
Nope, I would have gone splat. They would have found my pancake carcass in like a week.
I don't know how. It's like just standing up and moving on, continuing. Oh, I think I have a concussion, but that's okay. I'll still continue.
And coming from a person that's in the medical field, that just made me cringe. I was like, oh my God, she has this concussion. She needs a CT scan.
So that brings us to our first actual cliff scene since the prologue.
Indeed. And she calls out for Syaoran for the first time using his name, even though she mentioned she says it all the time in her head at this point. But, basically this, later on in arc 4, this is almost an exact parallel of what happens when the veil finally does take over her. And, she forgets him. And even though she's, so quote unquote, has forgotten him, she still shouts for his name. And so that's all I could think of during this scene.
I was actually thinking the other direction of how like Wish-chan uses both like CCS and like she kind of puts that into neutrals, because the scene that she references in this chapter is from the manga, and I don't remember exactly which force they were trying to capture. It could be like the earthy. And Sakura falls in a cliff, and then Sharon's like, Sakura, and thinking that he lost her, but that Kiroberos was able to like scoop her up, and Sakura's like, hey, you just called me by my name, can I call you by yours? So the whole falling down, Wish-chan takes a nod from that and does her own little spin on it.
Yeah, because it's been a long time since I've read the manga proper, like really sat down and read it. I'm rewatching the original CCS right now, and I know in the CCS anime they do the infamous elevator scene with the float, and so that's kind of what I know, what's synonymous to me in this scene. And so now I'm like really having the urge now, as soon as I finish my CCS rewatch, to reread my CCS manga. Pretty funny that to jump back a little bit, that Tomeo took it upon herself to leave too, which I thought was just so very much into her character, and it just made me giggle.
I can't imagine anything less of our Tomoyo. She was like, oh, it's so boring staying here, not filming anything. And then as soon as Sharon zips out, she's like, woohoo, opportunity. So Sakura, she manages to capture the Rocky. And I thought it was really funny when she freezes Syaoran too. I forgot about that part.
I did too. And I don't know if we want to talk about this more in detail when we go to highlight the Dark Force, but I thought it was kind of interesting to pick the freeze in order to battle that Dark Force. To me, that doesn't seem the most obvious choice. I guess in my head, I was thinking, since it's a Earth spirit, wouldn't you like fight it with a fighter, like a more strong, like you would fight it with Earthy, or she has the erase, because to me, I'm like, if you freeze rocks, they're just going to hit you harder. But I guess I could see kind of Wish-chan's thought process of like freezing them in a block of ice, so then they can't move anywhere. But in my head, I was like, I don't know if that's the route I would have took.
Well, the way I see it is that, like, imagine the rocks are hurling towards you. I think by using freeze, it just like makes them stop in midair and clunks to the ground instead of projecting towards you.
Oh, so they'd lose their momentum.
Exactly. They're frozen in the spot, and then they just fall, and they don't do any harm anymore. That's the way I visualized it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And so we also had another little poem there in the middle as well. And going off of my previous theory from our last episode of this actually being the riddle, saying this. And so I thought it was very interesting choice of words, because I don't believe that this passage here was talking about this particular chapter. I think it was referring to the future, because the riddle, or I'm just going to call it the riddle mentions biting lashes. And so to me, that's foreshadowing the whip that's going to happen. And then at the very end, they say, only if they can stand together hand in hand can they overcome the legacy. And so to me, that just kind of shows that, all the previous descendants haven't been able to stay together. Like Nadesco and Ryorin split. I assume every other generation before them did the same thing. And, and Syaoran and Sakura get told multiple times as we go along, like, Ali and Amiya can't be together. You guys can't be together. You're star-crossed. It's not going to be a thing. But I think that's how they're going. My theory how I think it's going to end things is only by them coming together and being in love can it finally break the curse. So to me, I think that's what this poem is referring to.
I love it. I love it. Nothing more to add. I'm just soaking it all in.
And then I thought it was funny that Syaoran had kind of a Jacob moment to do a Twilight reference where he immediately just takes off his shirt.
Of course, of course.
Old trope of, there's no Band-Aids, so I'm going to use my shirt.
Exactly. And Sakura's like, no, you can't do that. Well, do you have any other suggestions? No. Oh, well.
I mean, I call it a trope, but I say that in the most loving way possible because as a reader, as I'm reading this, I'm like, take it off, take it off.
I noticed that Syaoran and Sakura being alone in the woods together is actually the first time that we have a taste of them, quote unquote, living together.
So very true. Even like cooking dinner together, really.
Yeah, it's like tending to each other, like finding food, cooking the food, sharing a meal. This is just like a little bit of foreshadowing of the fun times to come.
Indeed. My only thing, and again, this is just me being a picky medical person, but do you think they used a water bottle in order to like make the cloth wet? I really hope they didn't put that in the river and then put that on their open wounds.
Oh, they used the river, all right. They used the river. That's okay. They have magic to to counteract any like bugs and bacteria, right? Right?
Dear listeners, rivers can contain lots of micro awfulness. If you put that onto an open wound, it can cause gangrene. Let's not do that.
So this chapter also gives us our first S&S hug.
So cute.
And I actually forgot that it happened until I was like I got to that section in the audio chapter and I was like, oh yeah, it's true, they hugged. And back in 2017, that was the last time I reread this specific chapter and I was blogging about it. And in one of my blog notes, I wrote, yeah, I forgot that they hug. So I think in theory, if there's no fan art of it, I'm just not going to remember it as well. But then it just goes to show that new trials can surprise the readers of 20 plus years just as much as anybody else.
So true. Yeah, there's many little things now, and kind of like how you mentioned a couple episodes ago that I'm just paying extra special attention to now. There's so many tiny little nuances that I'm picking up on now that I hadn't in so many years. But yeah, it's so cute. It's our first time.
And then we got our famous sunrise scene.
Oh, absolutely iconic.
It's like, it makes me fuzzy because I know that it's a reoccurring theme in New Trials, and it's what us fans hold on to every time New Trials becomes like dark and dramatic. It's like, don't worry, the sunrise is coming.
Well, and Tomeo has a quote that I think was foreshadowing on Wish Chan's part, and I don't even think she meant it to be. Let me find it real fast. But anyways, she says something that Tomeo says something along the lines of that sunrise scene will become one of the most beautiful moments. And so to me, and it has become, it's like to us fans, the sunrise scene is like everything to us. Like even we're 20 plus years now and none of us can stop talking about this scene. And so in a way, I think Wish Chan foreshadowed or manifest is probably the better word for that. She manifested this into existence by like, this has become one of the most significant, most beautiful scenes.
Yeah, I know. It's like after all of the petty arguments from ghost arguments and statues, it's like it's built. She just gave us a taste of, look, guys, SNS is beautiful and I love them, and this is what it could be. But I'm just gonna make Syaoran a jerk in a few chapters. But don't forget, it can be great.
Sakura ends up giving Syaoran the Rocky card. And another question I had for you is there a moment in New Trials where whatever cards that Syaoran had that he just gives back to Sakura?
I don't remember at all. I think like as New Trials goes on, we as fans, we like think that Sakura has all of the cards. Um, I don't even know what Sharon does with these cards because it's not like in CCS season one where it's like she had her cards and he had his cards and like he used the time to so that she can capture the dream. It's they're working as a team. And I think it could have happened off camera where Sharon's like, look, Sakura, you're the card mistress. You should really have these cards. But I thought it was really funny that they were fighting back and forth. Oh, you should have it. No, you should have it. No, you should have it. And I don't think this goes on for much longer. And I'm a bit relieved because it's kind of getting old in a sense of like, okay, fine. SNS are going to argue about who has the card, but then what does that mean afterwards? It's like they work as a team. If the card is needed, then they'll just use it. But I don't think there's an actual like official, okay, Sakura, here is the card and all the other cards. I think it's just something that kind of got left in arc one.
Well, and I think Tomeo, her thought process on watching that whole thing of like, there was a time where they fought over the cards and now they're fighting over who gets to keep the cards. I just thought that was so funny.
And maybe this just might be the transition that we needed to like have them stop fighting. You should have it. No, you should have it. Because then it's going to be like a, you hang up first. No, you hang up first kind of situation.
Very good point.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say about the chapter?
I think I'm good.
All right. So the dark force that was captured was the Rocky. I drew a fan art of this back in like I think 2012, and when I was drawing it, I noticed that it looked like Onyx from Pokemon. So I'm going to share that picture from the group in the group. So the official fan art spotlight is definitely going to be Til the Sunrise by Wishchen. And she posted it in 2012. And actually, this was a fan art that was paired with all of the edits that she did from prologue to chapter 4, because the fan art and the edits came out at the same time. And that's when she stopped with the edits. So chapter 5 is on her website is going to be the exact same thing as chapter 5 on fanfiction.net. So in her author's note, she makes a funny comment about how she drew SNS just like Syaoran still has his shirt on. They're not with like cuts or injured or battered or bruised. So I think it's the perks of being the author.
Yeah, she says basically, let's see here. Sakura and Syaoran are battered up, and Syaoran should be shirtless, but I wanted to keep the picture PG.
Yes. In hindsight, it's the better decision. It's like I'm a stickler for canon, but I have to agree. It's a really sweet fan art. We can't wait to share it with the group.
Yeah, it's super cute. It's one of my favorites for sure. And your little Rocky, I think, is just the most cutest thing. He looks so angry, and I love him.
I know. That's the problem with my drawing style. Everything looks cute, even if it's supposed to look mad, it's still cute.
I just love it.
All right, let's move on to the author's notes.
All right. So I already read the part 1 last, so I'm going to skip over that. That was in previous episodes. So we have Wish Chan part 2, winter 1999. Sigh, I had this chapter completed weeks ago, but I kept on adding to it. Sakura and Syaoran finally call each other by their names, and Syaoran tries to act like it's no big deal. You know why? Because he's embarrassed. Hee hee. I tried to make this chapter somewhat more romantic, though not exactly. I warned, though, this chapter was meant to be S&S in its extremes. I'm not sure if any other chapter will be like this one. Who knows? Guess what? Have you ever taken an English course where the teacher yells at you about the beginning, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution? Good news. Finally, the beginning has ended. Yep, all of that was the beginning. Gosh, how long is this series going to be? That's why there is so much of this weirdness. I changed the title of this part to Till the Sunrise. I think you would have figured out why by the end. The dialogues are pretty significant. Next chapter would start focusing more on the plot and details in the past, I think. Oh yeah, congratulate me. I have actually thought out almost all of the difficult story of the past. Change my words. I've got the basic story. Man, it's getting more and more complex. Now I have to write it, but what sucks is I still have a lot more to write about before I get anywhere near telling about the past. Wait, does anyone know how old Syaoran's oldest sister is? Or what Syaoran's mother's age is? And what is Syaoran's father's name? And then her Wish-chan note, August 2012, Chapter 4, Camping version 2.0 here. I joined part 1 and part 2 because I saw no reason not to have the 2 parts into one chapter, as they were meant to be, especially knowing that later chapters that come along are much, much longer. Unlike the previous chapters, I didn't have a hard time editing this chapter because I think it's still pretty fresh in my mind, as it may be my favorite chapter in Arc 1. I remember I really enjoyed writing the camping trip. If I remember correctly, this was written perhaps around Christmas time, 1999. It was funny also looking back and seeing when exactly I became Wish-chan. I did so in the middle of chapter 4, changing from me/author to Wish-chan. I remember putting a lot of thought into a nom de plume, being stumped, and then choosing one with a gut feeling. Though it's been my pen name for a good decade, it does not feel like me because it's not the type of name I would usually use. I would probably choose something flowery or Latinate or princessy. But in retrospective, I'm glad I chose a simple, short, meaningful name. Back then, I didn't even know that Clamp had a series called Wish. It seems that many a Clamp series deal with this theme of wish to an almost obsessive level. This moniker derives from a little sentence I wrote when I was 12. I wish a wish that is nothing but a wish, but the wishful wish inside of me. It's been a while since I reread the Campfire poem. I've written an awful lot of poems for New Trials for some reason and haven't written any since. It's a simplistic poem, but somehow reading it brings me back to how I felt when I was reading this chapter. Giddy, like I was gazing into the campfire, excited about the rest of the story that was to come, a bit hesitant. I never planned on writing the poem, but I think when I was conceptualizing this chapter, the verse kept floating around in my head and it flowed out into the structure of this chapter. I think it's painful reading back to my author's notes. Back then I sounded like, well, a teenager, LOL. And then she shouts out all her fun stuff.
Oh, it's really nice. Like just listening to Wish-chan circa 1999 and then listening to her again circa 2012 and how far she's gotten and how far she still has yet to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Again, I just think it's hilarious that she mentions, how long is this story going to be? 2 million words later.
And a pandemic.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. And, she mentions that she finally decided on calling herself Wish-chan and her little origin story of that, which I will admit, I don't think I've ever read that before. So that's new to me.
Oh, no. I remember reading this back in 2012, but I definitely haven't revisited. And I forgot about Clamp's Wish. That's like a really nice tie-in too.
Yeah, my brain didn't even go there. And then her little poem about wishing, I just think is so cute and so talented.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for listening to New Trials the podcast, where it must rain for there to be a rainbow.
You've been listening to New Trials the podcast. Please be sure to check out our audiobook version, which you can also find on YouTube or anywhere you find this podcast. Also, be sure to please check out the original fanfiction written by Wish-chan that you can find on fanfiction or on her original website, wishluv.com/newtrials.htm. We also now have a Google address at ntthepod@gmail.com. Please, if you have a discussion question or anything you would like to bring up on a future chapter, please feel free to write us at that email. If it is about a specific chapter, please be sure you get us that question before we cover that chapter, at least in a week's in advance so we have enough time. And be sure to stick around next week for when we do a deep dive into Chapter 5, The 5 Force Scroll.